Master Hakuin's chant in praise of zazen. From the very beginning, all beings are Buddha. Like water and ice, without water and ice, outside us no Buddhas. How near the truth, yet how far we seek. Like one in water, crying I thirst. Like a child of rich birth, wandering poor on this earth, we endlessly circle the six worlds. The cause of our sorrow is ego delusion. From dark path to dark path we've wandered in darkness. How can we be free from birth and death? The gateway to freedom is zazen samadhi. Beyond exaltation, beyond all our praises, the pure Mahayana. Upholding the precepts, repentance, and giving. The countless good deeds in the way of right living will come from zazen. Thus one true samadhi extinguishes evils. It purifies karma, dissolving obstructions. Then where are the dark paths to lead us astray? The pure lotus land is not far away. Hearing this truth, heart humble and grateful, to praise and embrace it, to practice its wisdom, brings unending blessings, brings mountains of merit. And when we turn in with the true our true nature, that true self is no self, our own self is no self. We go beyond ego and past clever words. Then the gate to the oneness of cause and effect is thrown open. Not two and not three, straight ahead runs the way. Our fold not being no form, in going and returning we never leave home. Our fault not being no fault, our dancing in songs of the voice of the Dharma. How vast is the heaven of boundless samadhi. How bright and transparent the moonlight of wisdom. What is there outside us? What is there we lack? Nirvana is openly shown to our eyes. This earth where we stand is the pure lotus land, and this very body, the body of Buddha. This is June 28th, 2024, and I hope you won't have too much trouble with my funny American accent. I've noticed since in the week that I've been here that there seems to be, often when I'm talking with someone, there seems to be a little bit of a lag of a second, maybe 2 seconds, where they seem to be trying to process certain words that they're not used to hearing pronounced that way. And the other way around too, when I was with Amala Roshi and Richard on the West Coast earlier this week, near Greymouth, we were walking through the Pancake Hills, marvelous experience, and we ran into a Kiwi couple that they actually had just gotten engaged the day before, and we connected, and started with me saying to the man, saying good morning. He said, "Oh, American morning." He was wonderful, really. He was a bright light. So I hope you can do quick processing of my accent and won't get held up by that. I'm going to endeavor to talk this morning about sanctioning, authorizing teachers in Zen. It's an ambitious topic to do in 45 minutes. There is this idea, goes back centuries, that It's a direct mind-to-mind transmission from teacher to student, and all the way back to the Buddha himself, or at least to the Buddha holding up a flower and Mahakashyapa responding with a smile. Let us be straight here and say that this is not any kind of absolute mind-to-mind transmission. There have been holes in the lineage that were later mended. Even Hakuin, the great Hakuin himself, I've read, didn't make it into the lineage, the teacher lineage, till after he died. He received posthumous transmission, and there have been plenty of others. But the idea behind it is a solid one, that we can't, in Zen, we don't leave it up to a vote. Actually, voting on teachers has been done. In fact, it's been done by the largest Zen center in the United States, the San Francisco Zen Center. I don't know if they still do this, but after a bruising experience with a teacher who had gotten sexually involved with the students, they thought it was time to go to a vote as for the future, his successors. He was forced out. It's not an outlandish idea, but the problem is that just because you're popular doesn't mean you're qualified to be a teacher. There are people, very senior people, who can be enormously popular, and I suppose people in Rochester may wonder why I haven't sanctioned those people, but it has to go beyond popularity. Let me start by possibly repeating something that Amala Roshi might have said, which is this: the three essentials of conduct, or morality, let's say. That's one. Other is dhyana, that is meditation. And the third is awakening. These three are very much interconnected. But I would start with morality as the indispensable, the most important thing in terms of criteria for a teacher, as I see it. The Sanskrit word is Shila. It's pronounced Shila, S-I-L-A. Shila is sometimes translated as morality, sometimes discipline, uprightness. We could even say character. Character. And I would place it as the most important because I've seen so many centers and ashrams and other spiritual places wrecked by teachers who misbehave. What is that saying among physicians? First of all, do no harm. We have it in as the first of our three general resolutions that we'll be doing later today, a resolve to avoid wrongdoing. When I say I'm talking, of course, about the precepts now, as far as the most important criterion for teacher authorization. I'm mainly talking about precepts 3, 4, and 5. Let's start with 5 first. 5 is not to abuse alcohol or drugs. This can lead to transgressions with 4 and 3 and 2, and it's often in these cases with predator teachers or reckless teachers. And I'm not only talking about Zen, but also Tibetan teachers and clergy of other religions. It's nothing new. This has been happening as long as there have been clergy. But the misuse, the abuse of alcohol, usually it's alcohol, it's not so commonly drugs, so easily leads to the number 3, sexual misconduct. Now there are people who defend those teachers who do this kind of thing. I've heard people say, well, he's such a talented, such a gifted teacher that I just see this as something that I can tolerate. I can work with this. It's an old question, isn't it? With artists, writers, sports coaches, they may be extremely talented in their particular craft, but at what point is it destructive enough that the teacher needs to be avoided? In this matter of morality or character, I would also place, and by the way, I'm speaking generally about my criteria for authorization. I don't need to talk about Richard or Roshi. You can draw your own inferences, and as well as Sante and Kanya in Sweden, Robert Goldman in Germany, the 2 successors in Rochester, and the late Gerardo Roshi, who died just recently in Mexico. But in this matter of character, morality, there's the issue of teacher-student boundaries. And here there is a range. I'm not preaching that it has to be one way or another. There are those teachers who hang out with their students in all kinds of ways. For myself, I may do this with very senior students, but otherwise, I've taken the advice of my wife, a clinical psychologist, to respect teacher-student boundaries. That a teacher, as I see it, I'll say myself, I'm not just a pal of the student. There is some matter of distinction to honor. It was the same with Roshi Kapleau and me and others. There's a place, of course, where a teacher might want to share experiences, memories, feelings even. It can be hard. I think the hardest part of my teaching career was the first few years when I was single. I didn't get married till I was 43, And it can be a lonely position to be a single teacher, and a risky one. Teachers have feelings, of course, that's all human beings do, and needs. But as my wife said about her own practice of psychotherapy, I don't want to impose my feelings on my clients. I want to not burden them with my own feelings. There's a range with this. I think what I've noticed and what I've heard is as we age, as teachers age, they're more likely to ease up a bit on this. And also, I think it's true that as we age, we become disinhibited with our feelings. I've heard this often about men. I think it's also true about women. But to keep in mind that there is wisdom behind teacher-student boundaries, and that's why I encourage all of you after Sunday's ceremony to address Richard as sensei. It just contributes, it fosters that sense of respectful differentiation. Now, when talk about the precepts, this matter of morality, I think any teacher can have a misstep and do something that she or he would regret. I think what I would always look for is whether there's a pattern of sexual misconduct, a pattern of drinking, a pattern of lying. That's precept number 4. That's when all the alarm bells should go off. And usually they are patterns. These rogue teachers, these predators, they don't just fall in love with one student usually. It's a whole sequence of monkey business with students. Such a disrespectful thing to do with a student. So 3, 4, 5. Misusing sexuality is 3, 4 is lying, and 5 is abusing alcohol and drugs. These are the main ones that I've learned that tend to destroy sanghas. Then there's also number 2, not to take what is not given. I think that's less common, but I've heard of that, misappropriating sangha funds. And the great thing about taking a long time before sanctioning a teacher, that is, knowing him or her for many years, is that you have the chance over time to really see how the prospective teacher handles themselves, especially in times of stress. Usually by the time someone is sanctioned, they've been assumed so many responsibilities and that involve a lot of stress, a lot of demands, and that's when we're most vulnerable, as we all know, to having our flaws kick into gear. Roshi Bodhin used to say, and he would be quoting, I think, a saying from Japan, Zen is above morality, but morality is not below Zen. So it's not the center, it's not the essence of our practice, is virtue and being good and not causing harm, but it is important, extremely important. What I feel about this matter of morality, upright conduct, is it's necessary. That's why I'm starting with it. That's why I would put it as the most important thing. It's necessary, but not sufficient. In most of the history of Zen, especially in China, it was much of an issue because these monks were all embedded in these monasteries where you didn't have temptations at least of alcohol and drugs and sexual misconduct with students. And the Japanese, if I may say, seem to take a kind of a more cavalier attitude about the precepts. They would put the emphasis on Zen is above morality. Rather than morality is not below Zen. Many of these great Chinese masters started, before they came to Zen or Chan, they started with a deep study of the Vinaya, that is the monastic rules and regulations. Sometimes these tendencies of abuse of alcohol and sexual misconduct tend to run in lineages. There's a very prominent lineage in North America, and maybe not only North America, where the founder, actually had a very well-known problem with alcoholism and sexual misconduct, and he actually drowned in the bath, his Japanese bath, while drunk. There's a saying from another tradition, can the crab teach its young to walk in a straight line? And yet, even in lineages stained by the founding teachers, there are plenty of successors who saw the great hurt, the damage that was done, and did not succumb to those kind of temptations. So that's I think what's the most important. I think you can help people as a teacher, a Zen teacher, without having come to awakening. I would say, and this may come as a surprise to many of you, it was a surprise to me when I first caught on 20 years ago, that most Zen centers in, let's say, North America, I don't know enough about these here parts, but most Zen centers in North America and Europe and Japan don't require any kind of awakening to be sanctioned, authorized as teachers. And I've actually not ruled that out. I haven't gone there yet. I know that the idea is that if you've been sitting for 20 or 30 or 40 years, even without Kensho, you still have a lot you can bring to the table, a lot of resources you can do to help people. And I've even thought about that, about someone who hasn't been passed on their first koan and gone through the koan system, whether they could be sanctioned to teach. But the problem with that is that then it comes with such a big caveat, saying, okay, here are the limits. Don't be working with koans with people, because if you haven't passed them yourself. That's, by the way, is a kind of a virus that's spreading in the United States, especially the West Coast. Everything starts there, where people are treating koans as for literary discussions, without having worked on them with a teacher who herself worked on koans in Doksan. They get together in these koan circles and then just exchange their views, their opinions of what this master meant and what that exchange meant. If they would be clear that they don't have the experience of having resolved the koan, that'd be fine. Sure, play around with koans. So most Zen centers in the world don't work with koans. But we have the privilege in our lineage of having offered them from the very beginning. It's difficult enough to discern when someone has had an opening, let's call it kensho. It's difficult enough even when they're working on their first koan. It's even more so when they're doing shikantaza or breath practice. It's very difficult. It can be for a teacher to discern whether someone not working on a koan has had a real opening. And openings, there are all kinds of wonderful makyo that can disguise themselves as awakenings. But this is one of the values of having the koan system, is that there are a series of testing questions, checking questions that a teacher has in her toolbox to make it a little less difficult. Because most first awakening experiences are very faint. There, I've said it. Most awakening experiences are faint in the beginning. There is a change. There is a change. Otherwise, we wouldn't call it awakening. There is a shift in perspective that yet is not, as one of my Dharma brothers referred to when he was passed on Mu, he said, it was nothing to write home about. And that itself can be pretty rough in the beginning. When you've been passed on a koan, you can have doubts about your insight. That's where faith in one's teacher is called for. So let me just go way out on a limb, what is awakening? One way to understand it, this is probably my favorite, is to see into the essential nature of reality to some degree. And we need only refer to the early part of the prajna paramita to know what that means. Form is only emptiness, emptiness only form. Form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. There it is. So now we've moved on from the morality, or shila, to prajna. Kensho, awakening, insight. Insight's kind of a flabby word. It can go to sesshin and have insights that fall short of what we would call entering the first gate or passing your first koan. And then there are hundreds of more koans to work through, and these are a tremendous training ground for a prospective teacher. They clarify one's initial faint insight. They test it with the teacher, sitting knee to knee, eyeball to eyeball with the teacher. They refine koan after koan through the preliminary koans, the Mumonkan, the Blue Cliff Record, the Shoyoroku. And they don't only refine and clarify one's initial understanding. It's a process that demands grit and develops grit. It demands resilience. To be wrung out of doksan hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, your answer rejected, demands resilience. It demands faith in oneself and the teacher too. You know that Bodhidharma doll. This is a big thing in Japan, where they show this legless figure. We have them in the West too. We don't call them Bodhidharma, but you give it a little bat, swat it, and it just comes right back up. That's what we acquire inevitably by going through all these koans. Now, even going through the whole koan curriculum over 10 or 15 or 20 years doesn't guarantee that one is ready to be a teacher. It's another necessary, in our lineage, not in other lineages, but in our lineage it's necessary, but not sufficient. And here's another, something else in the realm of realism, is that even there are teachers who have gone through the whole koan curriculum and still engaged in misconduct and cause problems. That's why character, morality is so important. I really have questioned whether even deeper awakening can change character, or can always change character. It should, theoretically. I used to think, okay, such and such a Roshi is supposedly had very deep experience. How could he be doing what he's doing with his students and drinking and so forth? But I eventually had to accept that happens. The koans are not a guarantee that one is of pure enough character to not cause harm. You want to see, before sanctioning a teacher, I want to see what I see as an effect of awakening, which is humility. If there's any stink, any pride of having supposedly attained something, then that's a danger. That's an alarm. I want to see ordinariness. In Zen, we say that the most developed people have an ordinariness, a simplicity about them. That is having left the whole idea of attaining something that we don't already have, having left that behind. I love these words from a Chinese master. He said, having some attainment is the jackal's yelp. Having no attainment is the lion's roar. And that's why, by the way, if I'm unsure whether someone has had a genuine insight and ready to work on subsequent koans, I'll just say, not now. I mean, some teachers would pass you, but there's no harm done by having you stay with your first koan. You'd want, in terms of some proof of the teacher's awakening, you want to see wonder. You'd want to see the teacher having wonder, not just all the answers, but an openness, a curiosity. The bar has been lowered a lot in the United States and Europe as far as authorizing a teacher, where I now hear of students who after just a few years are being authorized as full teachers. And you can, I suppose, you can run students through koan so fast that they may even have completed the particular curriculum of that lineage. But there's just no test like time proving one's steadfastness, one's faith. The longer we practice, the more our faith deepens. And that a teacher has to have that, has to have confirmed through her or his experience that what is common to all of us is this bright, enlightened mind. It's sometimes people, students of mine who've been working on their first koan for many years, they say kind of sheepishly, oh, thank you for your patience. And I can't even relate to that. It's no patience required. You already know that in their essential nature, they're whole and complete, endowed with all wisdom and compassion. You might feel sorry for them that they haven't confirmed that for themselves, but it doesn't require much patience. It's just a different thing. And then the other thing you want to see as evidence of a genuine insight is that it translates into compassionate responsiveness everywhere, not just with one's students, but everywhere, at the supermarket, at the bank, wherever you are, in traffic. That's a good test of one's practice. In traffic. Compassionate, skillful means. We have these annual meetings of the American Zen Teachers Association. I've only been to about 8 of them. We had the inaugural meeting in Rochester, but at one of those, there was a consensus that really what it all comes down to with teaching Zen, is skillful means. Adapting the essence of Zen, which is nothing, by the way, nothing at all, but adapting it to one's own culture, and the individual student. And then a teacher, before sanctioning a student a senior student, of course, would always want to see the spirit of service, serving the Sangha, and for starters, the Sangha and possibly others outside the Sangha. And we remind ourselves of the importance of this in the 4 vows, the 4 bodhisattva vows. All beings without number, I vow to liberate. If awakening is understood as sort of the eyes of the bodhisattva, and there's a koan that says, what does the bodhisattva make of all those hands and eyes? Because there are bodhisattva figures that are shown as having many, many, many eyes all over it and many, many hands and arms. Well, the awakening is the eyes, and then the skillful means or the compassion are the hands. So that's morality, awakening, and then the third essential, that's what these are called in textbooks, the 3 essentials. The third is meditation, dhyana in Sanskrit. You want to see a teacher continue to sit. I mean, I can't even imagine, I can imagine, but I don't know that I've ever heard of a teacher who wouldn't continue sitting. But this means, as I understand it, means more than sitting. It means extending into one's daily life, one's activities, one's interactions, this mind of stabilized awareness. Moving zazen. Mindfulness in the world generally, everywhere, but also in Sangha relations, interactions. Again, the skillful means. This is the stepping forward from the top of the 100-foot pole. It's also in a koan in the Blue Cliff Record where the master holds up his staff and says, "What will you do with it?" Staff representing awakening, one's awakening experience. And then he answers himself, "I place my staff across my shoulders. I go straight ahead, deep into the recesses of the myriad peaks." The myriad peaks. All the people, places, circumstances, conditions. Bring it forth. Behind these big 3, morality, insight, and meditation, I would say as a secondary asset as a teacher would be to be able to express oneself articulately, both orally and in writing, written pages. And I say this as secondary because it can't compare to the importance of, in my mind, of those other 3. But it's kind of handy to be able to express oneself clearly, to communicate well. But I know, I've heard from teachers who don't have that endowment, they don't have that ability. It doesn't mean that they can't guide, help people a lot. Now, as my last segment of this, I want to talk about different teaching styles. Different teachers have different styles. Each one of us is an individual who naturally have different ways of presenting our understanding of the Dharma. one of the wonderful things about a pilgrimage is it exposes you to different teaching styles, different ways things are done. And it was a big eye-opener to me and a great inspiration when I spent 6 months in Bukokuji temple with Tangen Roshi, and saw how differently he related to me and others than my own teacher, Roshi Kapleau, had. Roshi Kapleau was hard. He was demanding. He was critical. And that can work if you're the right person for it. I think, looking back over the many years, I think there was something about my own conditioning from my family, my parents, that worked with having a teacher who was so harsh. You see there's this image you see in art books and other books about Zen with a master with this scowl. And we know about, from ancient China, the shouting and the striking with a stick. I think I could count on one hand, the fingers of one hand, how many times Roshi Kapleau praised me. And then Tangen Roshi was the opposite. What an amazing thing. He just lavished kindness and praise, and it was almost embarrassing. We could call the Tangen Roshi style more of the affirmative or permissive style. And Roshi Kapleau's and Rinzai generally. Rinzai tends to be the more harsh and demanding and critical. Rinzai, Soto, you can roughly see these in terms of Soto and Rinzai centers. Soto teachers put the emphasis on our originally enlightened nature. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do, because we are all, from the very beginning, Buddhas, endowed with wisdom and compassion. In the Rinzai tradition, they would certainly have confirmed that through their own awakening. They know that. And yet, for them, the emphasis is more on realizing it, actualizing it, not just basking in one's original enlightenment with nothing you need to do, but really doing the work and confirming it in this lifetime, because we don't know what other future lifetimes will bring. They each have their pluses and minuses. And in the Yasutani Harada Kapleau lineage, we have tried to find the middle way between these two. We're not beating people up all the time about coming to awakening, but we also don't deny the possibility of awakening. The most joyous, life-changing experience anyone can have. In many of the pure Soto centers I've heard about, awakening is a dirty word. Don't talk about awakening. You're dividing the indivisible. Oh, I think it's unfair. You're selling the student short if you don't at least from time to time acknowledge or mention this possibility that is available to all of us without exception, this possibility of awakening to who we already are. just a little bit more in terms of different teaching styles. There are teachers who prefer, let's hope for the benefit of the student, who prefer to be treated as on a different level above the student. Some Zen centers that I've heard of, one of the rituals they have, the daily rituals, is for the morning sitting. The teacher comes in and walks through the zendo, and as he or she does so, each sitter will bow as the teacher comes by. There's value to that. That kind of respect for a teacher, recognizing that the teacher has the power to help one. But I myself was never comfortable with it. Never felt that was what I wanted to do. And that's more the other side, the teacher as an elder, not having reached some special stratosphere through awakening, but as someone who had got started earlier than most of his students. And by virtue of having gotten started earlier, has a lot to offer in the way of teaching. I think that's that's one way to translate the word sensei. It means to walk ahead. Not be above, but walk ahead. I'm more comfortable with that. I was addressed as sensei for 19 years before Roshi Kapleau died, and I accepted the title Roshi, which, by the way, Roshi just means senior teacher. Doesn't mean Buddha incarnate, just senior teacher. Teacher as elder the teacher recognizes that there's no end to practice, no end to enlightenment. We're all really walking this path together. So different styles. So Amala Roshi has found her style, which is much like mine, but not entirely, and that's wonderful. Roshi Kapleau used to say, I don't want a teacher who will just be a carbon copy of me. It couldn't be, because we aren't copies, we aren't identical, so there's going to be differences in styles of teaching, ways of teaching, emphases of the Dharma. And Richard, of course, his style will be in some ways the same and different in other ways. There's a saying, I think, from China, if we expounded the Dharma the same way all the time, the weeds in front of the teaching hall would be left 10 feet deep. I also want to see, before authorizing a teacher, I want to see her or him having been well trained in all the things that make Zen a tradition. We can see Zen, we can understand the word Zen as a tradition with its own rites and rituals and liturgy and ways of doing things that go back centuries. Or we could see Zen as just something that is nothing. From the very beginning, there's never been a single thing. But what an asset it is to have been trained as Amala Roshi was, and Richard has been, my other disciples have been. There was I was at the Swedish Sangha, our sister center in Sweden, has this large country center, and like Chapin Mill, they figure they have to be able to rent it out for some source of revenue. And they rented it out to another teacher or small group of teachers. And they invited, when they were moving into the Zen garden there for their 7-day sesshin, they invited now Sante Roshi, they invited Sante Paroma to join them in sesshin. And he said, sure, that sounds good, I'd like to do that. And then they invited him to join them. There were 3 teachers, not our lineage, but 3 teachers. And the 4 of them sat down, and one of them had a checklist, and he said, okay, now, who wants to be the lead chanter? And Sante was the only one who'd ever been trained as a lead chanter. And he finally said, modestly, okay, I could do it. All right, you do the lead chanting. Now, who wants to use the stick? Same thing. These teachers had never been trained to use the stick. So Sante said, well, I could do it. So he got that job, and so forth. It's now these 3 teachers, they may have had a clear insight into the essential nature of reality, but to not have been trained in these other matters is really a deficit as I see it. They put too much emphasis on koans, going through the koans, and not enough, I feel, on all of this, the substance, the structure, the container that Zen has found for its whole history. Just a couple other points short before I let you go. I've come to understand that the teacher-student relationship is one of affinity. It rests on affinity. It's not that one teacher... There's this doctrine in Buddhism of dependent co-arising, where it recognizes, this is reality, it recognizes that in any relationship, it's not just, in this case, it's not just the teacher, the depth of understanding of the teacher or her skillful means. It's not just the teacher, it's not just the student. It's that teacher with that student at that time, co-arising, emerging together, connecting. There are teachers who may have deeper understanding who aren't going to be as helpful to a student, and vice versa. And then, as Amala Roshi and Richard both know, the work goes on after becoming a teacher. There's this wonderful saying, if you want to master something, teach it. It's such a privilege to be a teacher, because it requires, it demands that we delve into this Dharma, this limitless, bottomless jewel teaching, that we go ever deeper into it. Hakuin, even the great Hakuin, was saying in his 80s, I think, that he was still digging things out of koans that he hadn't seen earlier. When Roshi Kapleau asked me to be his successor, I told him no the first time. I said, I don't think I'm developed enough. And he said, well, you don't have to give me your answer right away, just think about it. And then I came back and I told him no again. Same reason. And then he pulled out his trump card. He said, well, Bodhin, some people develop themselves more as students, and some people develop themselves more as teachers. All right then. All right. Let's stop and recite the 4 vows. All beings without number, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates beyond measure, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. All beings without number, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates beyond measure, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. All beings without number, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates beyond measure, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain.
Just some announcements before we go. We're going to have tea break now. If you haven't done so already, label your cups with your initials and you can use the cups for lunch. There'll be a few minutes and black tea will be served in kettles, and there'll also be an urn for tea bags. And we'll strike the big bell about 50 minutes or so as a signal to come back into the zendo. Also, this announcement about the bathroom. We're a big group, so please, when you've finished in the toilet, leave the door open so the next person who wants to use it, it's clear that that toilet cubicle is now available. So just mindfulness thing, always leave the door open after you've finished.
The teaching you have received is offered freely. If you would like to make a donation to support the continuation of this podcast service or learn more about practice opportunities at the Auckland Zen Centre, please visit www.aucklandzen.org.nz.